is a longtime friend of Rebel News. His name is Billboard Chris, and he joins us now via Skype at this late hour. Great to see you, Chris. I see a smile on your face. Give me your feedback on what looks like, actually, it looks like a landslide.
It is. So first of all, David Menzies is looking good. That guy's in good shape.
No one's born in the wrong body.
No.
Yeah, he wasn't born in the wrong body. Very manly. So, yeah, I've been looking at the data here. There were 7 swing states, and it looks like Trump is going to win them all. I think Arizona is pretty close right now, but Trump is currently at 248 electoral college votes. You need 270 to win. Pennsylvania is 19 seats, so that would take him to 267. He's leading by 224,000 votes. Over 90% of the vote is in. So that means about 630,000 votes, 640,000 votes are left to be counted. Kamala would have to win about 430,000 of those. Yeah. So good luck. Not going to happen. And then in Michigan, then there's 4 other swing states up for grabs. Michigan, he's leading by 6 points. This is over. Trump's going to win. And
well, tell me about
fantastic news.
Tell me about the role of men in women's sports, men in women's bathrooms and change rooms, men in women's prisons, and men dressed as women in schools. Did that play a role in this election? And if so, how much? And if so, to whose credit did it play?
Yes, this is hugely important. So I've been saying for years, and people always tell me I'm crazy, that the one way you win these swing voters, and you win traditional lefties, and you win the immigrant vote, the African American vote, the Hispanic vote, is to talk about gender ideology, because most of these people don't like this at all. And my number one supporters are always the Black community and the Hispanic community. And if we look at exit polling today out of Michigan, for example, among Latino voters, 60% voted for Trump, 35% voted for Harris. He just won Miami-Dade for the first time since 1988. It went Republican. And it's because they talk like normal people. They don't bother worrying about what the leftist media is going to say. And they go after all of this woke nonsense. And gender ideology is the biggest nonsensical thing of the bunch. So I think it's hugely important.
Yeah, I just checked, and a huge lead in Miami-Dade. I mean, that is not normal for that to be Republican. It's by more than a 10-point gap. So you think that this is I think you're right to say that new immigrant communities care about this, perhaps more than old stock communities. But how about women who traditionally vote Democrat, who say, and boy, I sure heard it a lot, I'm voting for abortion rights or reproductive rights or whatever the term was. I heard the abortion campaign calling card more in the last week than anything else. Does transgenderism win some of those women over? Because boy, the Democrats were playing hard on the Roe v. Wade thing. Does transgenderism connect with other women?
This is the one reason you're getting a lot of women from the left voting for conservative parties. I know in Canada in the previous election, I know a lot of NDP voters on the federal side of things went from NDP even to the PPC because they were the only party speaking out against gender ideology. These other parties in Canada need to get on board and realize this is not a popular issue, and they need to stop being afraid to talk about it. But yes, the world's waking up to all of these men in women's sports. Even the UN published a report a couple weeks ago showing all the medals that have been taken by men competing in women's sports. Just this week, we had the news revealed that Emain Khalif, this Algerian boxer who won a gold medal in the Olympics, that everyone clearly said during the Olympics, this is a man, but you're not able to get the medical reports. Well, one of his medical reports was released, and yes, he's a man. He has a disorder of sexual development called 5-ARD, alpha reductase deficiency syndrome, where he had this hormone that caused things not to develop properly, but he has a micropenis. He has internalized testicles. When puberty hits, he releases testosterone just like any man. He's XY chromosomes. He's fully male, despite whatever disorder he has. And the Olympics knew this, and they buried it. And people are just done with this insanity. They're done with being polite. And the more and more people learn about what's going on, the more they're going to keep rejecting these leftist parties that are pushing this insanity.
Hey, I got to go ahead, Sheila.
You know, Chris, I just had a maybe it's a question, maybe it's a comment, but I think a lot of people are becoming increasingly skeptical of big pharma, especially over the last 4 years. We saw it happen over COVID, and I think some of those same people who were probably more like, well, it's none of my business, I'll just live and let live, now they're quite skeptical of big pharma and this desire to medicalize children from even prior to pubescence all the way to the end of their days. And so I think some of those traditional left-wing skeptics of big pharma are sort of joining the battle, and they're coming in from that direction too.
Absolutely. People realize how much we've been lied to. We were lied to all about the COVID pandemic constantly. And thank God for Elon Musk for keeping free speech alive. Because a lot of these issues we would never know anything about. Because as it was released with the Twitter files, the United States government was working with all of these social media companies to censor the truth and to take down accounts that were speaking the truth. So people are naturally very distrustful of the government, of these pharmaceutical companies, which have been proven to be lying over and over again. And when it comes to this transgender business, well, it was revealed about a month or two ago that the federal government, under the Assistant Secretary of Health, a man named Rachel Levine, who says he's a woman, they ordered the World Professional Association for Transgender Health to remove all age limits in their standards of care, their recommendations, because they didn't want those age limits being used in lawsuits against them. And just this week, it was reported that Johanna Olsen Kennedy, who runs the gender clinic in Los Angeles, buried her own study for 9 years. She had a study going on with $9.7 million funded by the National Institute of Health, the NIH, Fauci's organization, where they studied 95 children. And because the results of this study into puberty blockers showed that it wasn't helping kids, she didn't release the information. And so all of this stuff is coming to light. We absolutely should be distrustful of these health organizations because they've proven they don't deserve our trust. And I think a big reason Trump's also having success, in addition to freedom of speech, the help from Elon, a better ground game, is he has a better team around him. He's got Robert F. Kennedy involved. He's got Tulsi Gabbard involved, Elon Musk, these people who are now going to go after the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry because people are waking up and realizing that we're being lied to constantly.
Hey, Chris, I got a question for you. I think Americans generally are more boisterous, more vocal, and more confident in how they speak than Canadians are. And that's a generalization, but I think it's part of their style. I think their First Amendment encourages it. In fact, the birth of their nation through revolution rather than negotiation is part of it.
Yep.
So they're blunter sometimes. Do you think there's any lessons Canada's Conservative Party can take from this election in general, but also on controversial issues like transgenderism?
100%. We have to just tell the truth and stop worrying about what people are going to say about you. People tell me all the time I have more of an American style because I'm just calmly telling the truth. And I totally agree with what you said there. Going back to 1776, the United States was born out of rebellion. It was born out of revolution. And I think that fighting spirit has been passed down generation to generation. Canadians have this reputation for being polite. And what we've seen in all of our major political parties is an unwillingness to just tell the truth about this. And it's not playing it safe when you're not telling the truth. I disagree with that completely. They just have to tell the truth, and they will get more support. Pierre Poilievre in the last year has started to come around on this issue of gender ideology. He said at a press conference, after about the fourth time he was asked, that he was personally against puberty blockers for kids. This is a guy that had voted for Bill C-6 and then Bill C-4, which made it a crime of conversion therapy to help your child feel comfortable as their sex. But they're obviously learning and coming around. But I think they need to get bolder about it and stop worrying about what CBC is going to say, because they'll pick up more Canadians this way. They'll pick up more votes.
Danielle Smith took a stand. I think it'll win the day in the general population, but courts, I think, may undo her. And
Right.
I don't think she's yet invoked the notwithstanding clause. I'm talking about transgenderism, this policy about no men and women's sports and no irreversible surgeries for minor children. What do you do when, I'm going to use the word the deep state, that is teachers who are members of the teachers union, certain permanent staffers in school boards. What do you do when there is a group of people who control public policy who are not subject to election say, I'm just not going to go along with it? And I mean, I'm worried about what the Trudeau judges will say, but even if it's upheld as lawful, what do you do when you have an intransigent minority that controls the levers of power? I'm worried that that's going to happen in Canada. That's a question that's sort of not really connected to the election, but I'm curious Sheila and I were talking about this the other day. What happens if Danielle Smith brings in a popular policy to stop transgender extremism, but the forces of the status quo just ignore her and do what they want?
Yes, so that is the problem in Canada. We have the system, the judiciary, the current political system. Every single government regulation, this idea of gender identity is baked into everything as though it's fact, when it doesn't exist. Gender identities don't exist. That's just a terminology that's been pushed by the left that everyone has bought without even thinking about it. All a gender identity is a personality, and their own propaganda says that your gender identity is based on your personality, your likes, dislikes, hobbies, roles, expectations. These are all just sexist, regressive stereotypes. But there will be a big fight legally, and this is where lawyers are going to need to get involved. I think absolutely, if needed, she'll need to invoke the notwithstanding clause. The Premier of Saskatchewan said he was going to do that when he talked about getting gender identity ideology out of schools. And that's a double-edged sword, the notwithstanding clause. It can be used for good and it can be used for evil. Well, in this case, they certainly need to use it for good. But in the longer picture, we just need to continue raising awareness, because there's a lot of talk about this Overton window. The Overton window is terminology honoring a man named Joe Overton, and he called it the window of political possibilities. So these are the subjects in today's society that you're able to talk about and achieve success on politically. And his theory was that politicians are not leaders, they're always just followers. And this is why culture wars are important, because it's up to people like us to move that window to wherever we need it to go so that it becomes a political possibility to put an end to this. And as society learns all of the nonsense and the harm that results from gender ideology, I think naturally we'll start to be able to get it out of government and get it out of all of these regulations. But it's certainly going to be a big fight on our hands.
Sheila, last word to you, my friend.
Chris, where can we find out what you're up to next? Because you are constantly traveling the world, quite literally the world, to move that Overton window, to shift it, to advance the culture war so that it becomes absolutely unconscionable for one day a judge to strike down a law like the one passed in Alberta, or soon to be passed in Alberta. Where do people find out about that, and how do they support the work that you do?
Thank you for asking. They can support me through my website, billboardchris.com. There's a little donate button there. I've got big plans coming up for the future. So I'm going to be launching a 501c3. That's a nonprofit in the United States. I've got an excellent board. Co-founder of Moms for Liberty is on there. I've got a young up-and-coming hedge fund guy who's politically connected with Vivek Ramaswamy and connected with the Free Press. I've got an international human rights lawyer from ADF International on there. And so one of my goals is going to be to raise millions inside that nonprofit so that heading into the midterms in the next election cycle, we'll have ballot initiatives in all of these Democrat states, because the Democrats aren't going to get away from this on their own. But the will of the people is there to stop this insanity. So we can get ballot initiatives done in each of these states where when they go to vote for their governor and they go to vote for their representative, they'll also be voting on whether they want to stop child transition, if they want to get men out of women's sports, because that's the way to win it in the United States. But yes, I do have things going on globally. I'm suing the Australian government right now for censoring one of my posts. And so is Elon Musk. Same case for censoring one of my posts. So we've joined our appeals together, and I'm working with X's lawyers. So I'll have a big court case going on starting March 31st of next year for 5 days down in Melbourne in Australia. But yeah, my main job is just to keep creating awareness, because all these other good things, the policy changes, the legal changes, the lawsuits that are happening, all of that really is downstream from building awareness, and the platform keeps getting bigger. I'm going to be launching merchandise and apparel too. I think that'll help the campaign when people are wearing t-shirts and things like that. And it'll help me because I have a difficult time surviving sometimes, but I'll get by, and we're just going to keep winning this battle because it's too crazy to last. And the only question is how many kids are going to be harmed before we do put a stop to this madness.
Chris, we're glad you're fighting the good fight in countries all around the world. Thanks for taking the time to join us tonight.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Oh, hi, it's Ezra Levant here in Toronto with an important message because we need your help. Independent journalism in Canada is under attack. Government censors, big tech deplatformers, and the dying legacy media are all working together to maintain exclusive control on the information you receive. They don't want you to hear other voices like ours, and they really don't want you to be informed and to think for yourself. That's why the work we do here at Rebel News is so important. Our on-the-ground reporting, independent news shows, and special content you won't find anywhere else. It's all designed to give you trustworthy information and alternative viewpoints so you can decide for yourself. We don't get government money, and we are not owned by some big global conglomerate. We're funded by people just like you, so please support independent journalism and help us continue our work by subscribing and becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. Members get instant access to all of our shows, invitations to exclusive events, and access to our premium content like live event footage and documentaries you won't see anywhere else. Only Rebel News Plus members can join the conversation by participating in the comments section of our new website. That way you can have your say too. More than anything, though, you'll be able to take pride in supporting real, honest journalism, and you'll help our talented team continue to do the work to push back on the establishment. We really can use your help. We need it, in fact. So thank you, and enjoy Rebel News Plus.